Hello, hello, and welcome to another episode of the Self Love Lounge. I am beyond excited because today I have Kerri Lewis, who is an addiction and mental health recovery coach. Kerri, you got to tell us. I want to know more about this already. So tell me all about you, all the things.
Well, first off, Liz, you and I connected a bit ago, and I immediately was drawn to your presence, your ability to listen, and just your authenticity. So, thank you so much for allowing me this opportunity to connect with your community and just have a good conversation because that's what it's all about: is real, meaningful conversation between people. So, um, in terms of addiction recovery coach and speaker, I've since added speaker to my repertoire. Yeah, my mission is to really be a guide more than a coach to help people break free from suffering from addiction and mental health issues. And that stems from my own journey of struggling with a myriad of addictions, having been on my own since I was 14. I've experienced sexual trauma, domestic violence. Even abuse within the workplace just because I didn't know how to advocate for my needs for a long time. And as I have done the healing work since I was 14, because I started studying psychology at 14, and it's been a progressive evolution, I now feel compelled to show up in service to others and help other people start to live life really on their own terms. And that's so
Mhm.
broad, Liz, but that's really how I live. I live on my own terms.
I
So
love
much so that prior to me being on this call and prior to my boyfriend losing his wallet, we were filming a recording of him dressed up as cosplay to celebrate his birthday in the middle of the gym and the grocery store and all that. So
I love that. So
yeah,
fun. I love to do stuff like that.
yeah,
It's just so fun, right? You get to be you, have fun. It doesn't matter. You're not hung up on what people think, what's going on around you. You're just in your own little world in the moment. It's a beautiful place to be.
it really is. And important. I mean, think about it. Fun is a necessary, and your community needs to hear this, necessary component to showing up fully, feeling and experiencing life and healing.
100%. I tell everyone all the time, like, we can't miss the most important piece, which is celebrating, right? Celebrating yourself for taking the first step, for even showing up, being here, doing the work. Like, that's huge.
Yeah.
You know? So that's definitely a big part of it. And I always say, I want us to do the work, but let's have fun while we're doing it. Let's figure out a way to bring in an element of fun. So absolutely.
Well, here's what is critical. The reality is the work is arduous. Like, you guys have to understand, I have experienced 2 rapes. I actually worked my way up corporate America despite not finishing high school to becoming a CEO of a startup. I also helped to build another company. And so I had this lens of just showing up and producing, right? Why? Because one, we're conditioned to believe that we have to achieve results or some type of title or experience to be worthy of love, which is bull crap, but I won't even touch that. But secondly, work ended up being one of my addictions because I didn't want to face the fact that I was in a marriage that didn't fulfill me. I was depressed. I struggled with anxiety. So I just worked, right? When I started to do the actual work, which is so emotionally draining, you're exhausted, you're confused, there's no roadmap. You can have a guide like me who's walked through it, you can have a guide like you, but at the end of the day, it is your work. If you do not have fun, you're not going to make it through. And so I would say fun needs to be embedded in every day of your healing journey. And then something you highlighted that made me so happy, and I love that you and I are in agreement: celebrating. You have got to celebrate, because if you are here's the thing: for you to really show up and live fully authentic, fully expressed, grow and expand, which we as humans are meant to do, then you need to rewire your subconscious. And how do you do that? If we've been conditioned to conform, to believe that we have to produce, to believe that if we make mistakes, then we're quote unquote bad. The only person who's ever going to rewire your subconscious is yourself. And you rewire it by celebrating every small win, whether it's showing up on a call with Liz or drinking a glass of water. I was just celebrating to you that I was running late for our podcast, but instead of freaking out, I realized, oh my God, meditation made it so I'm just cool as a cucumber. And I even said to Nana, I was like, you know, she's either going to be okay with it or not. And whatever her response is, I'm okay because I know that I'm showing up the way I need to show up, right? And that comes from celebrating myself enough times to know that it's okay for it not to look perfect. You just got to keep showing up and doing it.
Yeah. And most of the time, the work that you speak about, it's messy, right? It's not, it doesn't look pretty at all. But guess what? It's part of the process. So I wanted to ask you about, you've talked about the work. Tell me what the work means to you.
Whew, you know, um, I can only speak to my experience. And obviously, I've worked with hundreds of people at this point, right? Because even as a leader in corporate America, in my later years, I was definitely more of a coach than a leader. But um, in my experience, it is the moment by moment feelings that come up. It's the moment by moment interactions that we have, and being aware enough to register how that interaction impacts our internal body, right? And here's the thing is, in the beginning, most people don't even have an awareness to the fact that what we're going through at any given moment has a direct impact on our body. Our body is going to tell us whether we're comfortable before our mind ever does. It's just that we have not been taught to listen to our intuition or listen to the responses of our body. And even if we recognize that our body is having a reaction, we have been taught to convince ourselves that we're wrong, right? So the work is first learning how your body responds to any given situation. And that's just being curious. That's being aware. That's being like, oh, I show up at Thanksgiving and I hate going every year, but every year I keep showing up and every year it's a year show, but I show up. Why? And even just asking the question is the work. And then you start to dig a little deeper and you start asking yourself, how does this make me feel? And then you start to break down beliefs. And I'll give you an example that I gave yesterday on my show. Um, I would have told you that I'm not racist, but I would have told you that I love everybody. I'm comfortable around everybody, whatever, right? The reality is one day I had an awareness, oh my God, I'm afraid to be in a room full of black men. And I'll tell you what, because I was conditioned to be afraid to be in a room with black men. If you think about it, we had cops playing in the 90s. 99% of the people being arrested on TV were black men. We had all of this narrative saying that, all this stuff. So, of course, right? So, what's the work look like in that specific instant? Well, now I have an awareness. As soon as I'm aware, I have a responsibility to examine that belief, examine where it came from, ask myself if it's true. And then for me, it was putting myself in situations to get to know black men in groups because it wasn't an individual. My boyfriend's black, so I could hang out with people, but like putting myself in groups and just realizing that I am safe and that it wasn't a true belief. But the fact that first I had to be honest about something most people don't want to be honest about, because then we believe we're bad for even having that feeling in the first place, which is crap, because it was just a belief that was embedded in me. And then two, challenging that belief and really asking myself, does that belief serve me? And then three, allowing myself to move through discomfort by putting myself in situations to prove to myself that that belief is in fact not an accurate belief, and that I need to reframe and experience a different situation to prove to myself a more positive, supportive, truer belief for me.
Oh, I love that. And, it's actually one of the processes we follow in for the love of self. We follow the TFAR methodology, which is thought,
Yep.
feeling, action, response.
Yeah.
So you just nailed it. So I would imagine being able to change your thoughts and beliefs when you've been through as much trauma as you've had is very challenging. And it's not something
Yes.
that you just did overnight. And I'm sure you had to constantly be in that practice and of changing that mindset. Tell us a little bit about what kept you going. What was your why?
That's such a good one. Um, well, initially, when I struggled with addiction to drugs and sex, that's been in my teenage years because I was essentially on my own at 14. I had a place to stay. My parents did provide, but they were not present, they
Mm,
couldn't be. So I dove headfirst into sex and drugs, chasing the love I never felt I got at home.
mm,
And my twin sister, I showed up at her daughter's second birthday when my face kicked in, having been in another situation with my ex-boyfriend at the time, and she looked at me and she said, "If you stay, you're going to die." And this is what I want your audience to understand, because we hear a lot about what people say about what's your why, who's your why. You, if you're struggling like I was at that time frame, don't love yourself. So you are not going to fight for yourself. I could have easily died and wouldn't have cared.
right.
My twin sister, though, she and I have been through the wars, and so I was like, there's no way I can imagine leaving her to face life alone, having gone through our childhood together. That was my initial why. And then, and I've been studying this stuff, but here's the thing, to your point, if you are not actively working on your mental health and changing those habits, you're actively becoming mentally ill. That's the best way to describe it, because mental wellness is no different than physical wellness. You have to put forth work every single day. And so I got sober. I took my ex through the court. I kept studying psychology, philosophy, theology, but guess what? I wasn't actively doing the work. And so I fell back into addiction, to the belief that I had to work. So I was a workaholic, right? Type A personality, control freak. And then I'm miserable that way because that's not who I really am. So I'm drinking 2 bottles of wine at night.
Mhm.
Even though I'm studying everything about meditation, I'm studying it, but it was just knowledge. It wasn't wisdom yet. And then my second why came when
Wait,
my old,
we got to tweet that.
yes,
Say that
yes.
again.
So it doesn't, because like you can absorb information, and all that is knowledge until you apply it for it to become wisdom.
I love that. That's
It's so true.
good. That's real good. Okay.
But it's so true, and I think I'll share a story with you about the fact that I know so many people who have gone to academia can spit facts about psychology, psychiatry, mental health. They're some of the most broken, unhealed people I know because they get the text, they can speak to the language,
Yeah.
they're not doing the work. And the reason I take issue with that, and I don't judge anybody because we all have our own journey, but I do want to highlight, if you are in a profession where you are not seeped in the work yourself all the time, you could potentially injure somebody. You could, because you're not a depth to be able to really understand and identify the suffering or the experience that that person is going through, to really hold space for them in a way that they feel supported, and then they could feel judged.
It's so true. I definitely agree with that statement. And I know even for myself going through this process, just full transparency, you know, I consider myself still healing and probably always will be healing and going through that transformation and that journey. I just think life is an evolution of growth and healing in different
Yeah.
capacities, right? But when I started coaching, I realized I had a lot of limiting beliefs that I hadn't looked at or addressed myself that I needed to start working on, because otherwise I wasn't going to do any good as a coach.
Yeah.
And so I've had to do that work on myself. And honestly, I say this all the time. The work we do, we're learning and teaching, right? We're
Oh,
students
yeah.
and teachers. We're not one or the other. We're both, right?
Yep. I love that you said that. You're spot on, Liz. And I said that to somebody. I was talking to a dear friend of mine, Gail Kraft, earlier today about that very topic is that we are all students and we are all teachers. And interestingly enough, right? I always find that whatever's coming up for me internally, I will jump on a call with a client or work with a client, and that client presents to me the very issue. And because I'm so tapped and tuned in, the universe provides healing for both of us because whatever transpires between that conversation, and I do believe that where there's two or more, there is God or universe or energy, whatever you believe, because we
Yep,
are all a collective energy source. Um,
yep.
the healing happens in that conversation for sure.
Oh, absolutely. It's so true. I know my clients have, they're on their journey, right? Like we all are, but they teach me just as much as I teach them. And I'm very vocal about that because you know what? We all have things we need to improve and work on. And sometimes we're not even sure what that is, right? Until it gets brought to our attention and into our awareness, kind of like what you're talking about. So yeah, I love that. So tell everyone a little bit about where you're at now, the work you do, the people you help. I assume is it both women and men? Did
Up,
I?
we're in the internet vortex, Liz.
Oh, sorry about that. I was like, she must
Oh,
have heard me. No, I was just saying, can you tell us a little bit? I love what you're talking about, and I think it's great. Can you tell us how that led you to the work you do now, and what is the work you do now? Tell us a little bit more about that.
yeah, I think, well, let's go back to my second why was my older sister passed away from drinking. And at the time, I was super successful. Um, and I was drinking 2 bottles of wine at night, raising 2 kids. And so her death really forced me to examine what I'm going to call my house of cards, right? Because we are all built on this fragile infrastructure of limiting beliefs. And as a result, I decided that I was once and for all not just going to study, consume information, but I was going to apply everything I learned and take action. And so within 6 months, I picked my whole life apart. I left my secure job as a leader with Nordstrom, I left my house. All of my assets to my ex husband, and I got my 2 children, and we dug in and we did the messy work. Like, I really dug in. And then I was asked to help open a cannabis company. At the time, I was completely sober. I am a nerd, so I wanted to understand. So I understand the medical benefits of cannabis, and I justified working in the industry for that reason. But when COVID hit, I had a bird's eye view of just how ill equipped people are taking care of their mental, physical, and energetic health. And I was morally conflicted because here I am completely sober. I wasn't consuming cannabis. I helped build a $122 million company, but
Mm,
I'm watching people from CEOs to 21-year-olds and everybody in between
mm,
spending infinite amount of money to numb out because they were afraid. They didn't know how to take care of their mental. And so I dove headfirst into coaching. I'm like, I'm going to just quit. And at first I started with business coaching and transformational coaching. But what I really quickly realized is even my business clients, right, business owners, struggle with addiction. And why? Because of what you just said. They had limiting beliefs, negative self talk, zero sense of themselves outside of the belief system that they had grown up with, whatever that is, and that's so individualized. And then, of course, I'm watching them lean into addictive behaviors. So I decided to pivot to addiction and mental health recovery. And I am, because I've been studying this since I was 14 and doing the work since I was 14. I come from two lenses. One, I'm very, very spiritual for people who are spiritual, right? I've studied theologies from all across the world, the Bhagavad Gita, the Bible, the Tao Te Ching, A Course in Miracles, the Quran, like you name it. which by the way, all when you strip down the text, they all break down to the original sin is lack of love for self and
Mm.
lack of joy. And if you can live in those two spaces, you can manifest anything you want. But then I also, because I come from a family of academia, I studied quantum physics, because if you're not spiritual, then I can prove to you through science on an energetic vibrational level the importance of healing, so that again you can experience a life, because our thoughts create our reality, right? And that takes a lot of healing to understand that, because when you're steeped in suffering and you tell me, what do you mean I created being raped twice? I'm going to tell you to F off. But it is true once you do that work. And so I'm a results orientated coach, meaning I'm not talk therapy. If you're looking to just talk your way into healing, don't hire me, because I'll fire you. You need to do the work. You need to take action, and the action can be really small, right? So I work with people who are in active addiction. I don't believe you need to quit your addiction to do the work unless you're in physically imminent danger. I actually don't recommend that my clients do that, because all they do is quit the thing that keeps them from suffering. And then we wonder why we have an 80% relapse
Mhm.
rate. It's because people don't have the tools to actually break free from suffering, so they no longer need to struggle with addiction. But to do that, you have to do the things that we agree that you're going to do. And it's a collaborative effort, but I use everything from, much like you, celebrating, tapping, journaling, to physical fitness, nutrition. I mean, I am very, very skilled and wise in what I do. So I create a personalized, um it's not even a program, because it's constantly evolving. It's an infrastructure that me and my client work with and come up and agree with and check and adjust to help them learn tools and strategies, so that over time they learn themselves, they trust themselves, and they then no longer need to lean into addiction, because they're not suffering, because they now know who they are at their core, and they're not looking for external validation, accolades, or base their worth based on labels or how far they've achieved whatever that is they think they need to.
And you do this on a one-on-one basis?
I do both. So I have a community. It's called Having the Tough Conversation. That's a community. And the reason I started that, one, mental health isn't affordable and it's not accessible to a lot of people. And that's just not, that's unacceptable in my books. Everybody should have access to mental health care. So people get to meet me in groups that way. And it's collaborative and there's accountability. And then I do one-on-one coaching as well. As now I'm doing like speaking engagements in schools, colleges, and businesses to talk about the importance of self-care in the workplace and having the tough conversations. Because I'm going to tell you right now, Liz, the biggest issue I see across the board with people outside of not knowing themselves, they don't know how to get their needs met, because they don't know how to ask or talk about those needs. They don't say,
So true.
hey, my love, I need quality time. You cracking out to the game system isn't good for me. Or going to their boss and saying, listen, I've watched you promote three men over me for the past 5 years, and that feels really unfair given my accolades and my whatever it is. And so I teach a communication with compassion course that really focuses on, one, having the tough conversation with yourself first, because if you're not honest with yourself, you can't be honest with others. But then two, I teach people how to deliver messages that are kind, that are compassionate, but that are non-negotiable, and set very clear boundaries and limits as to what it is they're willing to tolerate and not tolerate anymore. So,
Love that. That is amazing. You're doing such great work. It's so
thank
needed for
you.
sure. I love it.
Yes.
I love
Yep.
it. So is this group and course and all of that open at this point for anybody to
It
jump
is.
in if they
So,
wanted to?
yeah, so it's $22 a month. You get access to any of the groups during the week. So if you want to go to one group or two groups, that's fine. I did, and then it's what, eight right now. I have eight groups a month. Um, and I have right now, the one that most people are part of is the unisex, so both men and women. But I did create a structured program for only men, only women, only teenagers, and then the collaborative one, specifically because having survived sexual trauma, I know that women and or men might feel uncomfortable
Yeah.
opening up that conversation. And then for teenagers, I was at Teen on Drugs. And right now, if you look, the highest rate of suicide and mental health issues is the ages 19 to 29, because they don't have the capabilities and capacities to take care of their mental. And so it's really important to me, which is why I'm talking in schools too, to be able to offer accessible, relatable, tangible mental health strategies and tools to teenagers.
Wow, that's amazing. And what a great price. I mean, that's definitely something that anybody could be have access to and do. I mean, you can't even go out to dinner for that price anymore. So I
Yeah,
love
22 is very personal because it ties into your question earlier. What's your why? When my older sister passed away, I built my business. I have a skull for a logo, and this should tell your audience how much I am. um, I am very authentic, unapologetic. For 2 years, people are like, you need to change your logo because it doesn't align. And I'm like, absolutely not. If you're not going to hire me because I have a skull for a logo, then I'm not your coach. But the skull is a riff off the tattoo my older sister and I got the last time I saw her. It's a skull. So that is my business logo. And 22 is the date of her birth. And so I chose $22 a month and owed to her, and to make sure that it was accessible to people.
I love that. Oh, that's beautiful. Yeah, and I
Thank you.
agree. I don't think it matters what the logo is. I think it's,
No.
you know, listen, people don't buy for they buy because they like you, right? They
Yep.
resonate with what you're saying. So, I absolutely agree with that, and I love that you're doing that for your sister and as a reminder
Yeah.
to her. So I love that. That's great.
Thank you.
So any books, quotes, anything that of source of inspiration that you can share with my audience. I know they love
Yeah.
books and quotes and anything like that. Self-care routines, anything good like that.
I mean, my self-care routine is really intense. I'm gonna leave you with this.
Okay.
A lot of my clients, I am a big firm believer of the Book of Forgiving by Desmond Tutu and his daughter, and I always mess up her name, so I'm not going to say it. It was the Archbishop in South Africa. He experienced apartheid. Um, to the audience, the greatest work you're ever going to do is to learn to forgive yourself. And the reason I say this, and this is the work, is when you can show up fully in forgiveness for yourself, you cannot carry a judgmental or critical bone against anybody else in the world. And the reason why is you reconcile with yourself. We are all doing the best we can. We are all experiencing life without tools and guidance, and when you know better you do better. That's a quote by Maya Angelou.
I love
But you got to forgive yourself, and so do the work. It's internal, it's messy, it's ugly, as Liz said. I love that you're doing the work on yourself, Liz, and I'm so honored to be here. I think you're an incredible woman and you're doing amazing work, and I really honor and value that. But forgive yourself, let yourself off the hook, because having studied the theology and quantum physics, I'm going to tell you, guilt and shame are the lowest vibrating energies you can exist in. They're close to death, meaning the lowest energy, and you're never going to be able to shift out of experiencing suffering if you do not give yourself grace and let yourself off the hook.
Ooh, that is beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. I absolutely agree and love that. So thank you. Wow. And you know what? Your story is, it just there's so much courage there. And I love how you took something that, all that trauma and you turned it into something good for the world. And it's just I have so much respect for you and all the work you do. So thank you.
Likewise, thank you so much. And thank you for the work you're doing, because it's when we show up for ourselves, we actually are making a difference in the world.
Yes. So, Kerri, tell everyone where they can find you.
Really easy. KerriLewis.coach across everything. So that's my website. That's my social media. I believe that's my YouTube channel. But if you go to my website, you can find all that anyway.
Perfect. I will make sure to throw that in the show notes so everybody can look out and find you and your work. And thank you again
Awesome.
for being on today. So appreciate it. And everyone, make sure to check out Kerri Lewis. We want to make sure that we take a look at that group space. It sounds phenomenal, as well as her course. Follow her on social media. I know that she is nothing but a ray of love. I know firsthand she has sprinkled me with her beautiful magic on different occasions when I really needed it. And I'm just so grateful to call her a friend. So, everyone, thank you so much for taking your time out of your day to listen to us on the Self Love Lounge, and can't wait to see you again next week. I love you all to the moon and back.